Welcome to What is Going On's Truth in Medicine show. Each month, broadcaster, author, and media consultant Sandie Sedgbeer and naturopathic medical doctor, researcher, and global health educator, Dr. Donese Worden, bring you the latest news and research from leading-edge science and new integrative medicine to help you outsmart cancer, chronic disease, aging, and more. Here's your hosts, Dr. Donese Worden and Sandie Sedgbeer.
Hello and welcome back to the Truth in Medicine show, co-hosted by me, Sandie Sedgbeer.
And by me, Dr. Donese Worden. When it comes to intimacy and sex, some people in their 40s and beyond are far less inclined to talk about it than they were when they first embarked out on the adventure. And yet, sex is a subject that is more likely to pose problems and therefore requires more advice as we age.
From painful sex and erectile dysfunction to loss of interest or diminishing sensation, many issues can upset the delicate balance of factors involved in sexual desire and pleasure. If you've experienced this firsthand or are concerned about the effect advancing years might have on your sex life, stay tuned, because tonight Dr. Donese Worden and I are going to tell you everything you ever wanted to know, and possibly a good deal you never thought you might want to know about sex, chemistry, hormones and aging. So
they do go together.
They certainly do. So Dr. Worden, it's been said that it's easier to do sex than it is to talk about sex. Why is it that the older we get, the less we want to talk about it, the more we want to do it? And sometimes the harder it is.
You know, I think it's kind of a middle section, though, Sandie. It's, you know, even in my practice, it's the young ones that, when I say young, 30s and 40s, that aren't really wanting to talk about it. They're having less sex. They're stressed. They've got problems with it. They'd rather go, you know, do all the other things that they're doing. And then in the middle age, we start maybe wanting to talk about it again a little bit. But women in particular, they start experiencing some of the things that you mentioned in the intro, the vaginal dryness, men with erectile dysfunction, and they're embarrassed about it, don't really want to talk about it. Their doctors don't ask them about it. But the good news is 70 to 90-year-olds have more sex. When they're healthy, they have more sex than anybody else, and they're willing to talk about it. So they've lost the whole body image, I've got to look good. They just turn off the lights and have a great time.
They just want to feel good. So really.
That's right, and they don't care. Yeah, they've lost that, you know, oh, I don't want to talk about it, or I'm too busy, or I'm too tired.
So 70s and 90s, I mean, you've got patients of those ages that are still sexually active?
Absolutely, and they're having a great time. I mean,
good for
these
them.
80-year-olds, yes, they're 80, and it should give all of us hope, right? In their 80s, they're coming in, and they've either lost their partner, you know, sometimes one of their partners has died, and they're coming to have a new partner, and they're having a great time. And if both partners are still together and they're both healthy, it's amazing. You know, they're going on cruises, they're dancing every night, they're doing all this, they're actually being intimate with one another and having a wonderful time. Now, I'm prefacing this by healthy. They have cardiovascular disease that decreases that. If they've had cancer and they've had surgeries, there's things that stop that. But the natural process, when they're healthy, it's amazing and it's enlightening, and I just get tickled about it. 70-year-olds, 80-year-olds, and 90-year-olds talking to me about their new boyfriend or their new girlfriend if their partner is passed. And it's just amazing.
So it's a bit like a second youth then. Wow.
Yes, it is. And
gives us something to look forward to.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, well,
let me tell the middle-aged women that why they need to be taking care of those problems, physical problems, and males, cardiovascular, erectile dysfunction, they need to take care of it. They usually say, well, I'm in a relationship, doesn't really matter, neither one of us care, and they just forget about it. Well, they should be caring, Sandie. It's a big part of a relationship.
Oh, well, it's a big part of life, let's face it. Come on.
Right.
You know, but let me start by asking you, I mean, I hear this term sexual dysfunction. Now, obviously, we know about erectile dysfunction. We know about some of the problems that women can have. But how would you define sexual dysfunction? What constitutes that?
Right. So sexual dysfunction, we could define as an inability to have an orgasm, an inability to be able to even have vaginal intercourse because, there's a reason in the vaginal area where they can't be entered, painful intercourse. With males, it's not just about getting an erection, it's about maintaining one. And so all of these things, to me, dysfunction means if you want to be intimate, you should be able to to do so and not have anything blocking your way. So dysfunction is defined in many ways, but let me give you a couple of stats, Sandie, that's a little disheartening about, and it may let others say, oh, it's not just me. 43% of women have some form of sexual dysfunction. But here's the kicker. Only 12% are bothered by it. They go, well, yeah, I can't, and I'm not really bothered by it. But I would negate that. I would question that and say, I'm not so quite sure. But that's what the stats say. 43% of women and 31% of men have sexual dysfunction. And this is also interesting. Problems decrease for women as they age, and they increase for men. Now, isn't that interesting?
They decrease for women.
For women, yes. Because if they're treating themselves or getting what they need, then they really don't have as much problem or as many issues as men do as we age with sexual dysfunction. And, men, I will say, I have many that come in and they say I have erectile dysfunction. And the first thing I ask them is, do you still wake up in the morning with an erection? And they go, well, yes, sometimes. I said, okay, we don't have a mechanical problem here. It's not mechanical. If it was mechanical, you wouldn't be waking up with an erection. And they go, Their next thing is, I have a hard time. I can try to get an erection, but I can't maintain it. I'm just afraid of failure. And what happens is the one time they're either tired or they're distracted and they can't perform, they really are hard on themselves. And the next time they go to perform, they're in panic mode. It's going to happen again. So guess what happens? It happens again because they can't maintain that erection if they're running from the bear, if they're in this fear of it's going to happen again. So many times the best sex therapy I do for males is let them know you're not alone. Yes, that's happened. It's not a mechanical problem. If it is, we're going to find out, try to fix the mechanical problem. But if it's not mechanical, I say, you know what? It's in your head, all in your head. And your female partner, by the way, or other partner, I don't want to, be sexist here, but your partner, for the most part, won't really be that disturbed if you have a problem once in a while with that because there's many other ways for you to please your partner. And so they just need that it's okay, and it's not permanent, and then everything gets better.
Well, it's interesting that for women it gets better. For men, they have more problems. I think many people will be surprised by that. We're all familiar, because we see it on the TV all the time. We're familiar with erectile dysfunction. We're familiar with problems caused by the prostate, whatever. But what about, and we're familiar with the fact that many women, vaginal dryness, as they go through menopause, they have all kinds of physical symptoms that either are embarrassing or they just wear them out, the hot sweats, etc. They lose their confidence in themselves. Yeah, so one would tend to think that it is women that have the harder time than men.
Well, men go through menopause. Their testosterone decreases. They too have hormones that are not in the same balance that they used to be when they were younger. They too have this emotional, boy, what happens if I have a problem? So you hear about the ads for the conditions that we may have medications or drugs for, something to do about it. But the ones we can't fix, nobody wants to talk about. But we have things. The good news is for most of this, we really can get people better. We really can, and get them to know that they don't need to just not talk about it and not do anything about it because they say, I'm just getting older and this is the way it is. And that's what many of them do. It's almost an apathy. Well, it's going to happen and I'm not going to talk about it. And by the way, their doctors certainly aren't asking them about it. I'm one of the few doctors I know that, on the intake for somebody that could be coming in for pain management or something totally not related to sex. But I asked the question, are you intimate? When was the last time? Is it less or more than a year ago? And if it is, why is that? Is it you, your partner? Where's the problem? And they say, no one's ever asked me that. Even the gynecologist, they just do a pap and say everything's normal. See you next year.
Is it true that there is no training on sexual issues for doctors?
Not very much, and that's a problem. We look at, we're trained in the mechanical issues. If a woman comes in with vaginal dryness or painful intercourse, then okay, we're immediately going to start looking at hormones. If a male has erectile dysfunction, look at their cardiovascular system. It's not let's fix the sex thing. We just need to make sure that their cardiovascular system is okay, so they're not going to have heart problems. So we're taught to look at it from a mechanism standpoint, never about an emotional or intimacy type situation, which, by the way, we all have to have. That it begins in the brain. And the drugs, herbals, they can help increase nitric oxide, which really gets blood flow going. It can help maintain erections. It can actually help women have more blood flow to the clitoris. It can help us with the physical arousal. But guess what? You can't have that physical arousal. Very difficult to get that without an emotional connection. And certainly difficult to get to the climax part. So, we're not trained in that. We're not trained. We're looking at, okay, if there's, if we've got a problem, mechanical problem where there's no blood flow to the pelvic area, we need to try to find out what that is. But guess what? Anxiety makes the blood go to the muscles so you can run from the bear. And if it's doing that, do you think it's going to the pelvic area? No. We don't have blood flow. We have less sensation, and just doesn't seem like things are going to work.
Okay, well, we've got a lot to get through tonight. I mean, this is a multi-stranded subject, and I guess in a way I'm not surprised that it doesn't form part of the training for physicians, because we're looking at the emotional, the psychological, the mental, as well as the physical, and I would think that's a lot of training right there on its own. But where's the best place to start? Let's talk about what happens to our bodies, men's and women's, as we age.
Well, the chemistry does change. Our hormones change. We're no longer, as females, vessel-bearing. So now the body says, I don't need to do that. I'm going to decrease certain hormones. And I know, Sandie, you had asked me before about this whole, when estrogen drops, testosterone grows, and women start growing hair on their face or on their breasts, or losing it on their head. So that's because it's the same thing as a male that goes through that has high testosterone. They start losing their hair, but with high testosterone, you may have better libido. So it's about balance. Even though the estrogen goes down, all the hormones start decreasing as we age, male and female. We feel different, but the hormones are only a piece of whether we can feel sexual, whether we can achieve orgasm. Those are only a piece. And even when they decrease, it's more about balance than it is what's high or low.
So what can we actually do about that? I mean, it is a fine balance. There aren't many, what kinds of tests are there that we could find out if our hormones are out of whack, and how can we balance them?
Right. Simple blood test, but the real blood test, most doctors are just going to do, like in women, they'll do an E2 estradiol, one estrogen out of the three. They're going to maybe do a progesterone. And if you beg them, do total testosterone. That does not tell the total picture. You need total and free testosterone. You need DHEA, the beginning hormone. To make a long story short, there's about 8 hormones that you really need to look at to see where one's converting to another. You also need to look at the patient and say, what kind of risk am I putting them at? If a male has a very low testosterone, I know getting him into normal range may actually help protect him from prostate cancer. But if we go too high, it can cause prostate cancer. If we go too high in hormones in women, we can cause breast cancer and cervical cancer, ovarian cancer. So we've got to be careful. It's not about going high. But yes, any doctor that is trained, and I would say in the more natural hormones, right, not the synthetics, but in natural hormones, they're going to be trained to look closely at the balance and not just throw you on Premarin, which is one estrogen, which we know puts people at risk. They're going to be really watching carefully and making sure it's balanced. Those of us that are trained in that.
Yeah, there is a big argument that, should we really be replacing hormones if the body naturally wants these to begin to diminish as we age? Is it the right thing to be doing? Is it natural to be replacing them?
Right. And so there are different levels. So when you are a certain age, those hormones should be, for the general population, in a certain range. When you go through menopause or you're an older male, the lab values go down. They have been adjusted to say they should be lower. So if the lower level where you should be is still too low, I know environmentally hormones are being blocked. I don't like putting patients on hormones. I mean, I watch them carefully when I do. But I think that there's something blocking the hormones, probably environmentally. No, we shouldn't have to do it, Sandie, but I think our environment and many other things may be messing us up. And if our hormones are extremely low, it affects quality of life. So now if you have a family history of cancer and this, it's not worth it. We'll do other things. But if you don't, and I can keep you in that range, that lower range where you're supposed to be, and I can put you on things that help block it from, aromatizing or going up to the bad guys. I can help block it as much as we can, and we're watching it closely. That's the kind of hormone therapy that I do.
You're listening to What is Going On's Truth in Medicine show, and tonight Dr. Worden and I are discussing everything you ever wanted to know about sex, chemistry and hormones as we age. Still to come, orgasms, big ones, small ones, failed ones, and those that occur with no external stimulation at all. Stay tuned.
The future of Internet radio is here. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Change and growth are part of natural life and also part of your spiritual life. Everyone needs support and guidance, especially during life passages. Upgrade yourself with the OMTimes Experts program. With OMTimes Experts, you have access to the best intuitive coaches, spiritual teachers, counselors, astrologists, and oracles. Our team was carefully selected so you can trust. Find out more at experts.omtimes.com.
More than 24 million Americans have an autoimmune disorder, and that number continues to grow. I'm Sharon Saylor, and I'm one of those 24 million. To put that number in perspective, cancer affects about 9 million and heart disease up to 22 million. That's why I've brought together top experts and those thriving regardless of their diagnosis to bring you the latest, most up-to-date information. Join me, Sharon Saylor, Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, for the Autoimmune Hour on Life Interrupted Radio to find out how to live your life uninterrupted.
Some knowledge belongs to us and us alone. The way our girlfriends walk, talk, touch their hair. Details that only a sister can know about her girls. But what about our other girls? The ones we carry with us every day. Our bond with our sister girls gives life. But knowing your breasts can save it. Go to knowyourgirls.org for the facts you need on breast health. Brought to you by Susie G. Coleman and the Ad Council.
Welcome back. Dr. Worden, prior to the break, you were talking about how important sex is. As we age, I've heard you say it many times, sex should be considered more important, not less, in maintaining our health and well-being as we age. And you're absolutely right. You said that you're one of the few doctors that even broaches this subject with your patients. I've heard you say many times, to people about their sex lives, which surprises many patients. And I think I'm right in saying that many of your friends say that you actually prescribe sex to them. It's a must-have. It's a must-do. It's not something that they can ignore. So tell us why it is so important to, in maintaining our health.
Right. Well, just from an emotional, spiritual standpoint, when we are intimate with another person, it brings you closer in a different way. It's not just a physical adjoining, and people are much happier. And so studies show that, and people know that. When you have an intimate relationship, and if something has happened physically, mechanically, where you cannot have sex per se, you can still be intimate in many ways. And from a physical standpoint, Sandie, men are two specific benefits to men. Having sex on a regular basis reduces the risk of a heart attack by twofold. If they have it 2 times a week, they're 45% less likely to develop a life-threatening heart condition. And and you'll like this one, the British Medical Journal for middle-aged men showed us that the highest frequency of orgasm that men could have decreased their rate by half. It reduces their prostate cancer risk. It helps the more ejaculations and the more sex that they have, so their risk factors are going down for a lot of the things, cardiovascular and prostate, that affect men. Women, it helps decrease those PMS symptoms that you were talking about. Yes, if you're having a hot flash, you may not be wanting to have sex in that moment, but if you prescribe it, if you say at least once a week, start out with be intimate to start with, just intimacy, regardless of sex, it decreases the PMS symptoms. It helps increase the estrogen, the thing that's low that's causing the hot flashes. It increases the appearance of your hair, your skin, and nails. And, as women, you feel better, you look better, you think you look better, you feel better, and then you're more sexual. And more predictable if they're still having if they're still having cycles. It actually helps the menstrual cycles become more regular. And for men and women, it decreases our heart risk. It increases our immune system. It lowers blood pressure. It tones our, glutes, abs, and guess what? It improves our memory. And so I've got a fun one for you, Sandie. A study just came out today. I think it was either this morning at 4 a.m. or yesterday morning at 4 a.m. when I saw it. But they found that Americans with dementia, this is a large study, more than half of them reported having regular sex, those with documented dementia. Now, that's pretty interesting. So I don't know if it's just a mechanism of I want to improve my memory without them knowing that's what's going on, but what I think it is that you don't even have to have that memory. You can have dementia. You can be confused, but you can have a connection with another person that you care about, and that's always important to us, even if we might not even remember it, right? And sex improves our self-esteem, the relationship, and it actually helps increase oxytocin, that whole love cuddle hormone. You feel bonded.
It's interesting because I was listening to a radio program just the other day, and it was all about dementia. And the people that were being interviewed, they were saying how in dementia, the certain breaks, I guess, social breaks are taken off, and many people with dementia seem to be less embarrassed about sex. They want sex more. Right. They'll talk about it more than they might have done before. What is happening in the brain there to cause that?
Right. Well, there's a lot of theories. We know that sexual activity helps with better sleep, improves our sense of smell. It actually helps with your increasing minerals. So I don't know if it's a self-protective mechanism, but I do know that men's and women's brains are different, actually physically different, where the sex area lies. It's very interesting. So I don't think that we can say one thing is going to work for men and one thing for women. That we know men have a very large area, and it's in the center and the middle of the brain. It's very big. Women is much smaller, and it's in the occipital part, which is the back of the head. So we function differently a little bit just mechanically from the brain. So when you ask me about the brain, we don't know a lot about the brain. But the pieces we do know, that the pituitary gland, that hypothalamus and pituitary, that activates what needs to happen hormone-wise. If we're stressed and we have interpersonal relationships, it affects that and causes some of these sexual dysfunctions. So, the mind-body connection, like in anything that we talk about, really affects it, and especially in sex.
Well, let's have a talk about orgasms, because certainly for women, and I don't speak to that many men about sex, but I speak to a lot of my women friends. There seem to be so many different types of orgasms, the big ones, the small ones, the failed ones, the near misses, the damp squibs that they feel like you're there and then all of a sudden they disappear, and the ones that you've mentioned to me when we were talking about this show, which is the ones that occur with no external stimulation at all. So how is it that women can have so many different kinds of orgasms, and can men have that many different kinds as well?
So we'll start talking about the G-spot. I know everybody has heard about that. We're not quite sure where and what it is. So the G-spot in women, it's a few centimeters inside the vagina on the side closest to your stomach. So there's a spot there. And there's something called the Skene's glands, and that's kind of the female equivalent of the prostate gland, okay? Because women have to understand that the clitoris is a small penis, and that these Skene's glands that are up inside the vagina are the prostate. So when we're born, if we get testosterone, we're going to have a prostate, and we're going to have a larger penis. If we don't, then the penis stays small. It's the clitoris, and the Skene's glands, the equivalent of the prostate. Now, what does that have to do with anything? Well, the prostate produces this watery component, part of semen, and in women, those glands are thought to produce a watery substance that may explain sometimes female ejaculation, but it also has to do with orgasm. There are nerves in this area that produce an orgasm different to one that's produced by clitoral stimulation. So here's what women have to know. Some women may not have that G-spot inside, or they have less Skene's glands, less nerves there, or they don't have it at all. So it's impossible, anatomically impossible, to have a vaginal orgasm. So they can't say, why can I never have an orgasm vaginally, but I can clitorally? It may be because of that issue. Now, nitric oxide, talked about that a minute ago, and there's foods and all kinds of things that can help you increase that. That triggers the erections and female clitoral arousal as well. And that's how Viagra works. It blocks, and that's how it works. And many women, though, who have a larger G-spot can achieve a larger orgasm with that nitric oxide. Now, foods can make it happen. So it feels different. It is different. There are different places. Men, on the other hand, they can feel a difference, but I describe this to male and females, especially couples, if they're male and female couples in front of me. Male sexuality is an on-off button, pretty much. Anything and everything within a matter of seconds can remind them of sex, and they can be stimulated. It's pretty easy, pretty simple. They don't have a problem. Women, it's like this huge box with knobs and bells and whistles, and everything has to be tuned up exactly right. The house has to be clean. They have to feel pretty. Maybe I need to lose weight. There's a million things that have to go on in women to get to that place of, I'm okay, I feel good, I'm ready. Men, on and off. So those different orgasms also have to do with how safe we feel and where we are and how strong of an orgasm that we're allowing ourselves to go into.
What about those
Intimacy is the best aphrodisiac.
Well, absolutely, yeah. And, there's an old saying, isn't there, that for women, foreplay begins way before bed. Right. Way before bed, right. It's occurring all day long. If he's sweet to her, if he takes out the trash, if he's thoughtful and caring and kind, all of those things. Right. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. That's right, and that proves through and through. And we start looking at our transgender or other sexualities. We don't know as much of how that plays. We really don't. But there are trends that we can see.
But what about those orgasms that occur with no external stimulation at all, the kind that you could have with meditation?
Right.
You know, what's happening there? Is this a mental, psychological, emotional thing?
Sure, but you also have a physical thing going on. So if you're in that type of meditation and you're bringing that energy up, you're creating a blood flow. You're creating that blood flow to the pelvis. And when that starts coming and you're in that moment of this connecting, you will, without even realizing it or knowing that, you're going to be contracting either your thighs or your pelvis. There will be a mechanical, physical thing that is happening in the physical pelvic area that causes that ejaculation or that orgasm. So, you know, it's still mechanical. There's still a piece there that's mechanical.
But the stimulus
those are
is...
interesting orgasm. Yeah, it's similar. It's similar, but it is different because now you're connected to this, you know, I will say whatever you connect to in your meditations. And when you're connected mentally at that level, it allows the physical to not be so caught up in the mental and do I think I look pretty in the moment, and am I trying to please another person, and more important to please that person than please yourself. So it is different, and sometimes those can be stronger because all the other pieces are out of the way.
So what about somebody who has no sexual interest whatsoever?
Right.
You know, completely lost it.
Right.
What could be going on there?
Yeah, there's so many things, Sandie. There's abuse, there's mental, physical, sexual abuse, there's painful. They're the last time that they were in a relationship. If they got in a relationship with somebody else, even if it was pleasant, they're missing that person. There's so many things. But I there's very few patients that tell me that. You know, some will say, I haven't had it. It's that I'm in a relationship, having sex in 10 years. We're never going to have it. Don't really care. And I push them on it. And I say, you really don't care. I'm not talking about sex. I'm talking about intimacy. And intimacy leads to sex sometimes. When I really push them on it, no, they really are missing it. They are. They just have said, I don't want it anymore because they think they can't have it. And, you know, I will say this is an interesting part, too, Sandie, is that there's a secret sex nerve. It's really, it controls who we're sexually attracted to. And it's in the nose. It's an olfactory nerve. And it's probably the route where pheromones are produced. And I know you can talk about pheromones in a minute, but where we produce those pheromones. But this nerve O, those fibers go directly to the sexual regions of your brain. And it doesn't register a conscious smell, but it identifies a chemical sexual cue.
Yeah.
And it can make or break a relationship. And there's a little bit more to that. I know we can talk about after the next break if it's time for that. But I think people need to hear this because those chemicals change. They change after a while, who you're attracted to. And what's interesting is that someone who smells it, you're more dissimilar to your own, that's who you should be attracted to. It's this propagation of let's not, have too close of genes. So whoever smells the least similar to you is the one you're most attracted to. And what's interesting is that women on birth control, that screws that up. So they're saying maybe they are being attracted to the wrong person because that nervo is not working right. And they're going toward people who are similar in smell. So maybe, we may need to look at that too. In pregnancy, women are drawn to people with a similar chemical makeup if they're pregnant. So those hormones make a difference as well.
Yeah, I did a lot of research on pheromones some years back for a book I was writing on sex as well as attraction, charisma, what is it that makes us attractive? And, the prevailing thought back then was that the pheromones, they're a bit like, like a lock and a key. And they're quite specific. It's like having, one key will only fit one particular lock. And if you happen to have matching locks and keys, there you are. Suddenly the attraction is there. But there are so many other things associated with that. One of the things that amused me at the time was a lot of research that had been done, television programs, all kinds of things, showing that some, attraction can be as simple as you're in the right space for it. And it's the first person that happens to come along that, meets a small number of, points on your checklist.
Yeah.
It's also down to opportunity. There was one program I watched on the BBC many years ago where they were, investigating this, and they looked at people in bars and clubs and things, and they, men who did not find certain women attractive. As the evening wore on and people started leaving, those women that weren't attractive earlier suddenly became very attractive as the opportunity, was diminishing.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. But if we want partners that are going to last, what we have to know is that first chemical sexual activity, those first chemicals, that last about 2 years in a relationship. At that point, the couple shift out of that hormone into a more stable relationship, and other hormones start dominating. The one I mentioned a minute ago, the oxytocin, that's the cuddle hormone. The lust molecule only lasts 2 years. After that, if you don't have the other pieces of a relationship that are important that you forgot about in the bar that night, right, then it may not last, and that may be why we're looking at 50% or more of our relationships destroying. So, if we can be in a relationship for more than a couple of years before we say let's hunker down and make sure this is the right thing, sometimes that gives us time to say, okay, the lust hormone molecule has just gone down. Do I still have enough of the oxytocin cuddle hormone to still want to be with this person? And even though it's not lusty, you can still have wonderful, exciting sex, but it's a little different.
Do you know, it's interesting you mentioned 2 years because, again, when I was researching this book, a psychologist I spoke to always warned people not to make a commitment until 2 years had passed. But her rationale was the fact that for the first 2 years you're just projecting. You're just projecting everything you want onto that person. Okay, so you're listening to What is Going On's Truth in Medicine show. I'm Sandie Sedgbeer, and this month Dr. Donese Worden and I are talking about sex and what really happens to our hormones, chemistry and sex drive as we age. Still to come, getting it up and getting it on. Natural aphrodisiacs, AIDS and toys. Stay tuned.
The cutting edge of conscious radio. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single OMTimes endeavor. Host your show with OMTimes Radio Network.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
It only takes a minute to find out if you may have prediabetes, and you can do it at doihaveprediabetes.org. But you're probably not going to, are you? Kids, work, listening to the radio. You're busy, which is great because busy people can't get prediabetes. Oh my, I read that wrong. They can. Should have worn my glasses. So visit doihaveprediabetes.org and take a short test, because prediabetes can be reversed.
Brought to you by the Ad Council and its Pre-Diabetes Awareness Partners.
Welcome back. Dr. Worden, one thing we didn't discuss, genetics. Does genetics have anything to do with one's sex drive or indeed with sexual dysfunction?
You know, it's interesting. They did some studies on twins. And, they continued to study twins to say if they grew up in different houses, there's this whole nurture versus nature thing. And they're finding that, it's complicated. But for the most part, it doesn't look like it's that connected. There's pieces of it. More twins may have the same types of sexual dysfunction. But I think a lot of it is nature versus, the genetic piece. So we have a lot to learn on that. But there are some amazing causes of sexual dysfunction that we do know, right? We know that hormone imbalances. One that people don't talk about, the SSRIs, that's those Prozac, all the, the antidepressants, interpersonal relationships and the stress. But here's some interesting ones. EMF, electromagnetic frequency, disrupts the pituitary, and there are studies showing sexual desire and mood goes down. Another one is Depo-Provera. Those are the bone loss ones that we're putting a lot of women on. Yes, it may help with the bone loss, but it's very well known to cause sexual dysfunction. Oral contraceptives, Sandy, may permanently damage libido by decreasing the testosterone and increases sex hormone binding globulin. And even after you stop the contraceptives, that can go down a little bit, but it still remains 3 to 4 times higher. So that's the problem. And I tell young girls, this is something you need to know if you're going on the pill, because this can damage your libido and sometimes permanently.
Well, while you're talking about contraception then, what about the coil? Because I know many young girls who've not wanted to go on the pill, so they've chosen the coil instead, and then they've found that they have all kinds of other problems that end up affecting their sex life.
That's right. I'm not a big fan. I've had too many patients to have problems with them. Either they're reacting to the metals or the body just sees it as a foreign substance, so autoimmune. They have mechanical problems with it, don't feel well, they're uncomfortable if it moves with intercourse. Some women do fine with it, but others don't. I'm not a fan of it. I'm just not. Good old, and it doesn't protect you from STDs. It only does a piece of it. So these young couples or people that are not in relationships and they're having sex with multiple partners, you have to use a condom no matter what. So why go through all the other? Use the condoms.
And then many men will say, well, I don't want to use a condom because it affects, my pleasure.
And then you say, tough. Because they're getting savvier, though. They, too, are asking for their prospective sexual partners to get lab work before they do it. They want to see, do you have HPV, HIV? People are asking for blood work. It's not that uncommon now to say, okay, I think we are starting to be sexually attracted to one another. Let's get our blood work done and see. So that's a unfortunate but a common practice now. And I think it's actually wise.
We're making it all very complicated, aren't we? I'm sure Adam and Annie, you've never had this problem.
I know, but with these viruses and everything else on board, it's a different world, Sandy. It just is. It's prevalent, and these viruses cause cancer. I mean, they can kill you. It's not just warts and infections and embarrassing blisters. I mean, it's literally life threatening. So it's a different world. It just is.
Okay, well, let's move on to what I'm sure people have been waiting for, the getting it up and the getting it on part. Natural aphrodisiacs. Right. Tell us about those. What are the best ones?
Best ones are the L-arginine. That means meat, oysters. The people that people know about the oysters, the meat, salmon, nuts and seeds. Let's see, apples, garlic, red wine, anything that increases that nitric oxide that I'm talking about. But here's a funny one I always thought. Men with beans specifically to men more than women. I said the only problem with men eating beans for their libido is if they have the tooths after the beans. Now the women aren't going to have anything to do with them. So we got to make sure they can digest the beans. And if they do, then great. So you got to say what works well with you. But those are, from a food standpoint, the ones that are the most popular. There are all kinds of Viagra for men and women. You got to be careful. A lot of those increase cancer risk in both men and women and other kinds of problems, cardiovascular. But the botanicals, there's yohimbe, which has about a 40% response rate, and kava, ashwagandha, let's see, Panax, ginseng, rhodiola. There are multiple, but we think the mechanism is, again, that nitric oxide. Why are those botanicals working, right? And L-arginine and vitamin B5, they actually work on the neurotransmitters in the brain that control sexual behavior. So now we're working on the brain as well as, helping the urethral and those vaginal contractions that can happen during orgasm and help stimulate better orgasms.
So some of the herbs that you've mentioned, some of the natural plants, etc., the kind of dosage that you would get going to your health store, is that enough?
Usually, and again, every store, every one of these that shows that we talk about, if it's not in there what it says on the label, if there's arsenic, if there's lead, if there's other things, you got to be careful what you're buying, especially with herbs, because even though it could be organic, it was grown and picked at the right time of year. All of these things, when they concentrate it down, you may be getting high levels of arsenic. Now that's going to work against you. Going to work against the vascular system, and now we're going to have a sexual problem from that. So these herbs in their pure quality forms can be helpful if a lack of nitric oxide is the problem. But if you still don't like your partner, you could take the entire store worth of Yohimbe and it's not going to work, right? You still have to have that intimacy and the desire that you like your partner. None of these things are going to break through that and work. The only thing that might is Viagra, but it's interesting, even with Viagra with men, Sandie, without the brain desire, Viagra can make that nitric oxide go to the penis, but it will be hard for them to have an orgasm, and sometimes they can't even get the erection if the desire isn't there. Viagra alone, sometimes it won't work.
Yeah, well, I think that just underscores, the importance of that brain piece. But just to go back to the plants, you talked about, some of them having arsenic, lead. How would one know? Because nobody's going to put it on the label.
No, they don't. And so you have to ask if they, I tell patients you're going to buy that in the health food stores. The health food stores aren't going to ask. So you have to look at the bottle. You have to find a manufacturer. You have to call the manufacturer and say, show me a certificate of analysis. Sandy, it's one of the things that's been such an exorbitant amount of time. Anything that I sell, out of my shelf, I got certificate of analysis. I got the in-batch runs, and I make them do it every few months. I'm a quality control fanatic because I know how bad the supplements are out there, that they can be. So I you to find a doc that's doing the research for you, that we know what's on our shelves, and a lot of docs don't do it, so you got to ask if your doctor's doing it. But you can go to the health food store, open up that, look at that bottle, find that manufacturer, call them and say, will you provide me a certificate of analysis? If they say no, move on, because it's not expensive and they should be doing it. But no one's requiring them to do it.
Is there any brand that you know is good that you would recommend?
Not one brand for all the different herbs, no. And even brands, Sandy, even the ones that I carry that are doctor's line, I still require them to do it. I still require a C of A. There's not a brand I'm willing to put my name behind unless I've got a sheet of paper in front of me showing me that those supplements sitting in front of me got tested. It's too bad, but that is the reality of it. But, there's other things, all the things that we're talking about. You don't have to take an herb. You don't have to do this. There's, you can exercise the vaginal walls with pickleballs. There's so many things that we can do that are going to get us better and help us lose weight, exercise, go to yoga. Those things really improve male and female desire and body image to be, it's not just physical.
Yeah, so much of it is in the mind, isn't it? I mean, so many women, do worry about their bodies, and that they find that very inhibiting.
That's right. And, I prescribe this to women, especially if they've gotten to the point where the vaginal dryness has been bad, the vagina will actually really start growing together, and they couldn't be penetrated even if they wanted. So we start out, and I say, listen, if all you're doing it for is incontinence, so that your bladder's not going to drop and you start having to wear Depends, you say you don't want sex, okay. But for the health, vaginal wall, which is important, and you don't want to wear Depends when you need to do this. So I'll put them on very tiny little vibrators I'll get them on an estrogen cream, an E3. It's a different type of estrogen to get the tissue ready so it won't hurt. We have them insert very small little vaginal devices, and then they can work up to something like the Kegel Master. And the Kegel Master, you set it where it goes, you're literally working up to like you're working out with weights. You work small, and what it does is provide resistance, not just like you're doing a Kegel and you're squeezing and then you relax. When you relax with this thing, it's still adding pressure on the relaxation and the contraction. So the Kegel Master, you kind of work your way up into now you've got a strong vaginal wall, you've got the ability to have vaginal sex if you want, and you've got stronger orgasms, and your male partner, female, your partner will notice that your vagina is now feeling like it used to them, and not just lax and lazy and hurting and all the things that go with that. We can get it back in shape is the point, Sandy. We can whip ourselves back into shape. We may need help with hormones and exercise, but we can do it.
At any age?
At any age. I've had, I remember, I think the oldest one that came to me, and her husband had died, and 10 years before, she found a male partner. They were in their 80s, and they literally wanted to have intimacy, and they couldn't. She had literally grown together. He was in an erection. So we started this process that I'm talking about, and we worked on it slowly. We got it where she could open up enough and where the vaginal walls were strengthened, and they were as happy as you thought they were in their 20s. So any age. It's easier and faster if I catch a woman in her 50s when she's going through menopause and that dryness is starting. Much easier at that point, right? Once it's closed and tight, much harder to work with. But it can be done.
What's your view on some of these over-the-counter products to help vaginal dryness? Some of them are kind of hormonal. I'm not just talking about gels, but, the ones that actually are supposed to increase the secretions in the vagina.
Right. Well, first, if it's a real hormone, it has to be from a pharmacy and prescribed by a doc. The only one that's allowed out there is if you get like a GAM progesterone product, but that's not what you need for vaginal dryness. So if we need hormones, we need bioidentical hormones, in my opinion. There's not. The others are lubricants. There are some nicer lubricants out there, and obviously we don't want KY jelly. And why not? It's got constituents in it that in the long run are going to break down the tissue and cause the vaginal dryness. But there are nice lubricants out there. There's one called Woo for Play, which is nice. It's coconut oil. They're funny. They're cute. They, say all the right things, kind of get you in the mood because you're actually reading the bottle and thinking, oh, that might be fun. But Woo for Play is good. There's some natural ones from Dream Brands that have carrageenan in it, and those are the two that I generally like. There are other natural ones, but some of them are so liquidy that when you try to squeeze it out, you got half the bottle came out. Now that kind of ruins the mood, and others that are too stiff and it can't come out. So it's all part of it. But coconut oil can be healing to the tissue. It can, and if there's very little dryness, those kinds of things just might work. But if it's really gotten to be a problem, we can try other things, but the quickest and the best and the fastest, if the patient can do it, and we decide it's safe, that little estriol, E3 cream prescribed by a doc that knows what they're doing with it.
Well, we've only got a couple of minutes left, so in these last few minutes, tell us your prescription for turning up the heat.
Just, doing your internal work where you love yourself. And when you love yourself, then you can love a lot of other people, even with their inconsistencies, and they squeeze the toothpaste the wrong way, or in this case, they squeeze the lubricant the wrong way, right? So that we can be more forgiving. And I literally think it is the ones that I see that are having the best sex, Sandy, are the ones know who they are. They have a passion and purpose in life. They're busy. They may have kids. They may not. They may have, a purpose in their life. They are so happy within themselves and so connected that it's just one more level of experiencing something fun, either with yourself, which is just fine, or with a partner. And that's the prescription. And those couples that have gotten out of the habit, I make them go once a week. You go on a date night. I don't care if you have sex, but you're going to be intimate. And I mean, I want you to cuddle, not just hold hands. Mm-hmm. And it starts there because they've just gotten out of the habit. And then it usually just progresses where it needs to go. Unless we need to do couples therapy because there's too many other things that are in the way, right?
Right.
But know yourself, love yourself. That's the best thing.
Well, we all want to live a long and productive and useful life. So we might as well make sure that there's plenty of pleasure to go along with it.
That's true. And don't get caught up in not having fun with it, too. You know, if love is blind, then why is lingerie so popular? You know, we literally as women, you know, and I know women that say, I shouldn't have to dress up. I shouldn't have to do that for the male. But they've got to understand the male has this whole visual stimulus thing going on. So why not? Have fun, be play, and then they need to give back as well, which is that help you with the house, do whatever that they're not doing, taking out the trash. These are the ways that we need. They need lingerie. We need, to be able to feel appreciated and loved.
Right, and let's not forget then that foreplay begins before you get into bed. That's all we have time for this week. I'm Sandie Sedgbeer.
And I'm Dr. Donese Worden, and continue to join us to learn about healthiest lifestyle, not spare cancer, and other chronic diseases.
We'll be back with more next month.